You know what's cool? Beat 'em ups. You know what else is cool? Giant fucking robots. And through the combined powers of God and anime, we receive fill-in cafes, Mad Stalker, Full Metal Force. Mad Stalker was originally released in 1994 on the Sharp X 68000 home computer. The game was later released in the same year on yet another Japanese computer, being the Fujitsu FM Towns. It also received a console port in the form of the PC Engine. In fact, it was one of only 9 games on the console to be released via the elusive arcade CD-ROM format. 3 years later, in 1997, a remake of the game was released on the Sony PlayStation. This is the version that we will be looking at today. Full Metal Force is somewhat of a treasured release on Sony's console, as there are only a handful of 2D beat-em-ups available on the system. The genre began to fade to obscurity during this time due to the explosion of versus fighting games. Sony was also particularly conservative with their releases of 2D games on the platform, as they wanted to embrace the inaugural era of 3D video gaming. It's also worth noting that the earlier versions of Mad Stalker were the first beat-em-ups to be designed and programmed by Masaki Ukioi and Masatoshi Imaizumi, the former of which would later go on to become the director of Guardian Heroes, while the latter would go on to work on a handful of other cult classics within the genre. The action takes place in a single plane of space in fashion of games like China Warrior and the Ninja Warriors, as opposed to the belt-scroller plane of your typical Final Fight clone. This was a pretty necessary feature for the game, as it allows for you to pull off combos without having to worry about your mech being perfectly aligned with your enemies. Mad Stalker also has a roster of 6 pilotable mecha, though the additional 5 are only unlockable through use of this here cheat code. Thanks, GameFAQs! The robot designs are very reminiscent of Masamune Shiro's work, which is likely no coincidence, as his work was fairly popular around this time. Each of the several playable characters has 2 standard attacks, a roll/jump thingy, and a super explosion attack. The combat is pretty smooth, albeit repetitive, as there aren't too many unique moves to pull off. Thankfully though, the game doesn't overstay its welcome, as an average playthrough takes around 30 to 40 minutes to complete. To some, that may sound very short, and it is, but the pacing feels just right as it grants you with the quick high of temporarily being a giant mecha god without stretching the power for so long that it brings you to boredom. Additionally, there is much replay value here, as each of the 6 playable characters play quite differently from one another. All in all, the PSX version of Mad Stalker is quite a gem in the genre of 2D beat-em-ups. Compared to the original release of the gameplay is much smoother and more enjoyable, though there are a few aesthetic aspects in which the original debatably surpasses the PSX remake. Stripped from the revision are the cutscenes that would play between each stage. I am personally sound with the lack of these, as I don't give a shit about what the angry Japanese man has to say, I just want to beat up some fucking robots. The PlayStation version also lacks the sense of scale that was present in the original. Roaming the brighter cyberpunk streets of the PC versions were many a small robot, which makes you feel like Big Robot. Once again, I do not personally miss these, as the smaller hitboxes are far more annoying to deal with. They were not completely eliminated from the remake, however, though they are present far less frequently. Mad Stalker Full Metal Force is a style of beat-em-up that there just isn't enough of. I'm sure you can tell just from seeing the footage whether or not this game is for you, and if it is, you're in for a pretty good treat.